If you're looking to build your own home gym, a power rack will be one of the most essential pieces that you are going to invest your money into. In today's video, I want to help you and guide you towards that process and help you decide whether you should get a full rack or a half rack. Let's go. Alright, so coming from a person that owns a full rack, I think that a half rack is the best for most people. And in today's video, I'm going to go over the pros of each rack, and then you compare them side to side and determine for yourself which rack is better. Let's start out with the pros of a full rack. So a full rack is great if you're working out with two people that do different exercises at the same time. For example, if I'm squatting and my girlfriend is overhead pressing, she can overhead press in the rack, while I can squat outside of the rack. So you can do two separate exercises with two different barbells at the same time, which is absolutely great. Another benefit of a full rack is stability. Because its weight is distributed over a large floor area, you're going to be a lot better off if you have a full rack. The other thing is that you can have more pull-up bar options. Like I here have a multi-grip bar. I also have a V-bar, which I rarely use, to be honest. And then I have also a thick bar, which is impossible for me to use. Another thing is that if you train by yourself and you have a full rack, you can leave your J-cups at different heights. And you might even be able to leave your bench at the right distance. This rack also came with dip bars. So if you want to dip often, what you can also do is leave the dip bars onto your full rack because you're going to have plenty of space. Something else that is very important is plate storage. So typically if you have a full rack, you're going to have more options to store plates onto that, which I think is very great. So definitely would go with that as well. And another advantage of a full rack is band pegs, because if you're training in the rack, you always are going to have overhead beams, so you can always attach your rubber bands to that. And another thing is you can store just a ton of stuff around the rack. So I have here my belts, I have my belt squat machine. I have a lot of options here down below, so that is very great. Let's go over to my favorite, which is the half rack. And the half rack is really something that I love because as a home gym owner, every square meter of the gym counts, and you don't want to have bulky equipment just taking up a lot of space. And a power rack is probably going to be your biggest, bulkiest thing that you're going to have in your home gym. So that is why you want to have that as small as possible. And especially if you train just by yourself, it's going to be a lot more beneficial to just get a half rack, which could only come up to here instead of the full length that it does right now. Another thing is, if you're training with the bros, which happens a lot here, I typically just use the outside of the rack because I think the outside of the rack is way more comfortable. It's more open, you don't feel claustrophobic, and for me personally, I think training outside the rack is always going to be my go-to way of training. Now, as it comes to bros, like I said before, typically you're going to do the same exercise and rotate one bro to another. You're never going to need two barbells, you're never going to need two spaces. So typically if you're training with other guys, you're going to use just one set of J-cups and one barbell. So that's why a half rack is still going to be super beneficial. As it comes to stability, a half rack can be as stable as a full rack if you go with the plate loaded option. And if you have something like this, you're going to be solid AF because this rack, even if it's just chopped in half, is not going anywhere. Here I have 400 kilos loaded onto the rack, and that is going to anchor down the rack even if it's not bolted to the floor. So that is really something you shouldn't concern about. So floor space is a huge one. Having enough room is a very big one, and safety is also one of the first priorities. You see, a lot of people advocate the banded type of safeties, which I have hung there. And the reason they hang there is because I rarely use them. If I'm going to do something heavy, I'm going to do it outside of the rack because then as I said before, I do not feel claustrophobic and I feel like I can handle the weight a lot better. And safeties that come with a half rack are going to be plenty strong to handle the weight. If you ever have to drop it, they are going to be there to catch the weight any time of the year. This wraps up the video, guys. If you're looking for a power rack, I suggest to get a half rack. It's going to take up a less space, it's going to cost you a lot less money, or you can invest the money that you wanted to spend into a better half rack. And thirdly, you're not going to miss out if you're going to train with the bros, because you can all do the same exercise at your half rack as well. So yeah, these are my 2 cents on which rack to choose. Let me know in the comments down below if you know any more pros for one or the other, and I'm happy to read them. So I guess I'll be seeing you all in the next video. Peace!